Hey everyone, and welcome to the Decks of the Week, the weekly series where I showcase the top 10 best decks in Marvel Snap. If you'd like to support my content, hitting the like button is the best thing you can do. It's free and it's literally all that YouTube cares about, and I would deeply appreciate it. Let's get started with deck number 10. We're going in reverse order here, and it is Galactus. The newly changed Selene is in the deck here, going from a -1 power to a +2 power, and ultimately, hey, it feels good. I gotta tell you that I was kind of skeptical of the change at first, because naturally the original Selene was a good kickover target for a Nihilist, although in this particular deck, you do notice that 2 additional power. What I will say, however, is the secondary win condition of hitting them with a bunch of goblins then playing Galactus is a-okay. You also have the opportunity to play Alioth, because this deck tends to have strong initiative capabilities going into turn 6, especially with kicking the Void over, which generally starts to guarantee a location. Regardless, a very strong deck in the current meta, running a 55% win rate and a strong cube rate of 0.34 positive. I think this deck is definitely worth playing here if you're interested in playing a Nihilist, especially if you just pulled a Nihilist yourself. Let's move on to deck number 9 here. Deck number 9 is going to be Ongoing Thanos. This is one that has just recently emerged over the last day or two, and essentially it's utilizing the newly buffed Dazzler. Dazzler's seeing a lot of experimentation both in decks like this and of course in Patriot Zeus style lists too. What's notable about this deck is it's a Thanos deck that's taking a good note to use its ongoing capabilities. The Soul Stone, the Power Stone, and of course pretty much every card in this deck is an ongoing ability, with the exception of Rogue, but hey, Rogue steals ongoing abilities. What you've got here is, and Valkyrie. How could I possibly forget about Valkyrie? Valkyrie is just a great surprise card and of course works very synergistically with a lot of your stones. Regardless though, playing Blue Marvel, playing Khazar, you got Kyera here. It's basically a Thanos Zoo deck that utilizes as many of the ongoing abilities as possible in order to benefit from the Spectrum play as required. What you do have to note though is that Goose is in the deck, which does prevent you from playing Goose into a Valkyrie into the Goose or Blue Marvel or Spectrum, so you got to be very cognizant of how you set up the board when playing with Goose, because you just might screw yourself if you don't pay attention. Regardless, at a 55% win rate and a 2.9 positive cube rate, it is a relatively strong deck, brand new, and I'm sure that as more people experiment with it and the deck gets fine-tuned, that win rate and the cube rate specifically will likely go up. Going on to deck number 8, hey, it's the same old lockdown. Now, in this particular deck here, Jessica Jones is still one of these stars. I love seeing JJ in there. Storm continuing to do what Storm does. And again, you do have the Alioth. Now, this is probably one of the stronger places where Alioth tends to shine, although at this point in time, people kind of know it's coming. Once they see this lockdown style list and they see the Medusa and then the Nebula, they start to, okay, we get it. You have an Alioth in hand. And so that's one of the major tells. The versatility of the deck comes from both Doctor Doom and of course Vision. No longer using something like a Professor X allows you to basically use Doctor Doom to maximum effectiveness, granting you 15 power across the board. And of course Iron Lad is great for reaching. The newly nerfed Miss Marvel continues to be in the deck, but I'll tell you, in playing it, it's still somewhat challenging to make sure you set all the pieces right, especially with the 2 requirement. Jeff does help alleviate that, and of course, as does Doctor Doom, which is a huge component to ensuring that Miss Marvel gets her value, considering that the Doom bots are 6 energy cards. So ultimately, Lockdown at a 55% win rate continues to be a strong contender in the meta. Going on to number 7. Another Thanos deck. This is Thanos Tribunal. This one here is a slightly higher win rate and a slightly better cube rate than the prior, and what you're running here is something pretty traditional. Not by traditional, I mean what you've noticed over the last few weeks here. It is the Lockjaw Thanos style deck. It is running Tribunal in this list. You have Scar, so if you're interested in doing the Scar weekend mission, here's a good kind of deck for you. But moreover, it's still utilizing the recently nerfed Blob. Blob's text has changed significantly, only allowing, basically he only sucks up 1 more card after 15 power. So for example, if he gets a Red Skull and then a Power Stone, it's 14. And then because he goes over 15 on the Power Stone, it's 14 plus 3, which ultimately 17. And he stops there regardless of how many more cards are in the deck. Conversely, if there is a Red Skull at 14 and he eats an Infinite, he'll go up to 34 because Infinite was the next card until he crossed that 15 threshold. So the way Blob's working, he's still pretty good. Very strong, very big stat stick, and ultimately when you're playing Tribunal, you want those big stat sticks. I like the deck. It's interesting. I don't play it very often because I'm kind of sick of Blob myself, but ultimately if you're looking to get some Scar gameplay going, this is definitely a good choice for you. Going on to number 6. Talking about weekend missions, we got Meek. Now, Meek has actually been a quiet, strong performer here, and there's two different versions of Meek in this top 10. This is the first at a 56% win rate and a 0.31 cube rate. This is a very combo-centric Meek deck. Now, the one that I had done was much greedier with like the Onslaught and the Mystique. This one's much more tame, still utilizing the Gambit blow up style gameplay. I don't know how else to describe it. With Wong, anytime you have a discard deck with Wong and Gambit, you know what's up, right? Very greedy. But ultimately, what's interesting about this deck is you have Meek on the board, you have Collector and Morbius. If you have Swarms in hand, you can actually play Wong, and then you can play MODOK and really pump up those Swarms. Conversely, if you want to do even more, you can play Wong, and then on turn 6, you can play both Blade and MODOK. Blade will discard a Swarm, and then MODOK will just pump up the Swarms like crazy. And what's interesting about that is that if you play Blade first, you're actually going to generate more Swarms because you're going to hit them with Blade, which is single target, and then MODOK will start wiping them up, which is kind of interesting. And it'll generate a ton of value for both Morbius, Meek, and of course the Collector. Honestly, the value potential of these cards, these three cards, are insane. You can actually get super high here. And of course, you have the Apocalypse Dracula combination as well, which does not benefit Meek, unfortunately. Regardless, 56% win rate, a very strong deck. We go to Serra Control. Serra Control has been like up and down in the meta lately. I mean, it had a big kind of resurgence a couple weeks ago, then it kind of faded. Now it's kind of back again. Serra Control has been, a year ago, it was the only deck you saw around this time. And then now it kind of fades in and out. When there's a lot of like Tumulus changes into the meta, a lot of people say, you know what, I'm falling back on the safety blanket, I'm going to Serra Control. And ultimately at a 56% win rate and a 0.32 cube rate, it's competing with a lot of the very combo-centric decks. I do like the addition of Gladiator, a card that I've always loved, regardless of its pre-buff state. And ultimately, Legion provides you with a lot of optionality against She-Not, which continues to be pretty popular, especially in lower or mid collection level and ranks. Morbius giving you a lot of value against the discounted decks. So there's, especially since you're seeing a lot of discard and some people are trying to play down the Swarms and not playing like the combo-centric stuff. Ultimately, a strong deck. Honestly, and Blob is both countered by Shang-Chi and Shadow King, depending on whether you have initiative. Regardless, a strong list, 56% win rate, definitely doing well in the current meta. Then we go to number 4, and it's Annihilus by Night. I know a lot of people are pulling Annihilus out of the spotlight caches, and guess what? He's still good. I'm so glad they didn't nerf him down to a 5-5. That would have been so depressing. A 5-6, although nerfed, is still strong enough to generate a lot of value, especially when you consider how good just the Hood and Sentry are themselves. Adding Werewolf by Night here, and of course the Enchantress, does provide you with a lot of additional value. Now this deck can be a little tricky to pilot, so if you're going to try this one for the first time, I strongly recommend you do at least 20 games with it, ignore your rank and all that stuff, and just get used to the play pattern, especially with that of Beast and Falcon. Ultimately, at a 57% win rate and a 0.35 cube rate, it is really strong as we approach that 60 percentile kind of dream state where you want to be in the meta if you're looking to be highly competitive. Then we go to Meek Discard. Now this is a much more traditional discard deck. You're still running Gambit in this deck, believe it or not. Gambit's making a bit of a comeback, but you're not seeing the Wong, right? It's a little less greedy, but it's very similar. This is a much more kind of standard discard deck with docking in it, and it's kind of what you would expect. Much less of the burst potential of the collector-based deck, but much more, we'll say, reliable. It's still not reliable discard. Discard was at its peak when Chavez was what Chavez used to be. And now Chavez Meek doesn't quite replace Chavez, but it is a very strong one drop for discard, almost always being above 5 powered. Some of the Dracula, like the synergies with like you can't use Invisible Woman and Dracula and stuff like that is a little problematic, but ultimately continues to be a very strong deck. 57% win rate and a 0.39 cube rate makes this deck a solid one. This one here has been a performer. I gotta tell you, it's always great to see Jane Negative making a comeback. I know it's one of Cozy's absolute favorite decks. Jane Negative at a 57% win rate and an absolutely astonishing cube rate of 0.56. It's amongst the highest I've seen in a while. This is all infinite stats via Untapped. It is really remarkable how good this deck is doing. And once again, we have a Wong deck. The Wong Black Panther and the Zola combination, it just doesn't get much better than that. And of course, when you have the Zola Null combo with with your good boy there, Mr. Negative. It's always a time to celebrate. Both Ravona and Zabu allow for Mr. Negative to be played on turn 3, and that is a snap condition if you have those in hand with Mr. Negative, of course. There are almost no decks that can really confidently play into a turn 6 or 7 with the value proposition, the value generation of a Mr. Negative deck that's been basically popping off, right? Just be very wary of She-Not, who tends to run Leech, and there might still be some Thanos players running Leech in that original shell that's kind of outdated by today's standards, but still was relevant as of a week or two ago. We go on to number 1, and I can't believe it, but Discard is back. It's making a massive comeback. Some of this is coming from the fact that, you are seeing a lot of Annihilus to Annihilus decks at the top, and the meta as a whole is just favoring Destroy. You're also seeing a lot of Thanos-based decks trying to run Zoo-style things with like Dazzler and getting the stones buffed by Kazar and Blue Marvel. So Destroy has these advantageous kind of matchups in the current meta, and it has risen it to a 59% win rate, which is amongst the highest I've ever seen it, at a 0.49 cube rate. Truly remarkable. The deck itself, nothing fancy. It's as stock as you're going to get it. You got the Forge, you got the Deadpool, Killmonger. I mean, this is traditional Deadpool Destroy. The Deadpool Forge and Hulkbuster is kind of your major plan. What you want to do is you want to get that Deadpool as big as you can using Hulkbuster to make it happen. And of course, you can also Hulkbuster the X-23 if you so desire. It's up to you. Regardless though, I hope that this video helped you guys significantly. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. I would sincerely appreciate it. And we'll see you on that next Marvel Snap video.